Hey folks, appreciate you joining in. I just wanted to kind of take a second to maybe give a hand with folks who are having any trouble with this configuration and using the NVIDIA Control Panel, especially when using it with multiple GPU setups. So some of the things I wanted to go over were basically what are called the global settings and then the per application settings, where you can actually get around a lot of the issues where, say, the GPU driving your monitor is the limiting factor in running, say, frames per second on FurMark. So let me go ahead and open it up here. I'll show you what I'm talking about. And hopefully everyone can see that here. So just to go over let me actually enlarge the screen just a smidge for this. Get up to 150. Doesn't seem like the NVIDIA app seems to mind that too much. Anyway, let me just zoom in a little closer. So if you can see these settings here, basically you have different choices. This is your base profile and your global settings. So this is going to pretty much drive how the NVIDIA drivers and NVIDIA, say the brain itself of the cards is going to tell the cards how to run, the software that drives the hardware. So if you kind of go down here, you can see different things like GPUs, CUDA. So for example, if you got a multi-GPU setup, which I've got a RTX Pro 4000 Blackwell, RTX 5080, 4090, and 3090. So multiple generation architecture. So there might be some situations where I don't want to use all these, but in the global settings, you would not want to do that. You'd want to go ahead and keep everything as much you can as the default, unless you get to certain things like power. And you'll know which one's the default because it'll have that little rectangle looking NVIDIA logo to the left of it. And so some folks that are more familiar with gaming and things like that might be able to enlighten a bit on when you'd want to use DSR overlays. I guess it's counting your frames anywhere. Low latency. I mean, I'm following kind of the general guidance here, except for this, because I like to have the max performance, and this actually keeps the cards from, sitting idle and, not performing to their fullest. But this is one I'll show you. For the OpenGL rendering, that's basically the card that's going to run your frames per second. So if you're running multiple GPUs and you want to pick the one that's going to do the best in the performance, you have two ways of doing it. One, you can plug the monitor into that card, and then when you open the app, make sure you set the main screen or wherever the app opens from that same monitor. The second is going here to the 3D settings in your NVIDIA Control Panel, and you set it up this way. You actually move it off of auto select and then select the one you prefer. Now, what I want to get to next is the third, program settings. So say you have different benchmarks on your desktop. So you can go down here this way. Say like, I want to make, what was I talking about earlier, FurMark, right? So say I want FurMark to focus on, let me make sure it's the right one. Yep. So let's say for FurMark, CUDA, go down to the CUDA setting for GPUs. So, okay, the global setting, well, maybe I want it to use the 4090. There you go. Press OK for that one. System fallback, driver default. That's a pretty safe bet there. Max frame rate, you don't want that on. Power management, it carries over unless you specify otherwise, whatever you configure in your global settings. And so just to kind of show that this did work, so you know, the monitor driver on this, oh yeah, so I'll go ahead and save it. So you can see right here, the 5080, RTX 5080 is driving all three monitors I have running right now. So that leaves basically the 4090, 3090, and 4000 Blackwell just headless, ready to go. And ECC is another interesting thing. You actually do get that with the 4090 and the 4000 Blackwell. I don't want to turn it on. But there might be a situation where you got to be real careful, and that's what some people work with when they're doing more professional type, you know, enterprise work. And let me just configure out the quality too. I like that. And let's go ahead and give it a shot on Furmark. Make sure I get this one. Okay. You're able to see that. So it's going to try to default to the 5080, but hopefully it listens to me here. No, it sure didn't. It went ahead and ran the 5080 at half bandwidth. All right, so why don't we troubleshoot that, see why it did that. This is the real truth of it, the real fun. I wonder if it wasn't that. Save. Okay, let's see. There's one of them, application control for anisotropic filtering, if I'm saying that right. Okay, so there are a few things that were configured for something else. So off. Yeah, we don't want to have a max frame rate. We're running frame rate testing, do we? I hope that didn't mess something up. That's actually the first I've changed that. Or better yet, why don't I do this? For the OpenGL, let's try to set that for the 4090. Now, for those of y'all following along to this point, well, congratulations. That's really appreciated. And it's a good attention span by any standard today. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go ahead and close it out and fire it up again. And let's see what happens. There we go. Now, if you remember before, we were getting under half that. So that is quite a leap in performance. And obviously, too, knowing it's running runners off the 5080, see it's using the 4090 because I configured the OpenGL to run the 4090. Anyway, I appreciate you guys tuning in on this. And if y'all have any feedback or thoughts or anything to add, or maybe we could share some ideas on how to configure this for even better performance, especially across the multiple GPU setup. So again, thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, and talk to you next time.